So with the new 2025 sets officially being revealed, there has been a lot of talk about Ninjago sets within the community, and I'm gonna be honest, generally speaking, it's just caused me to look back at Ninjago as a whole. And with each wave of Ninjago came a lot of fantastic sets, but also came some sets that weren't too good, and it has made me wonder which ones in each wave weren't exactly up to standard. Because like I said, with those new 2025 sets coming out, there were one or two I weren't the most impressed with, and if you haven't seen my opinion on them, check this one out right here. But this is where I'm going to talk about every single wave of Ninjago and discuss the worst set of each wave. And before we get into anything, if you want to see a technical sequel to this, where I discuss the best set of every single wave, please let me know, because this was very fun to do. But other than that, let's get into which set was the worst. Also, let me know if you agree with me or not. Now, I will say, I thought this would be as simple as just looking at every single season and their associated sets. But the thing is that some of the earlier waves and earlier seasons of the show, for some reason, had their sets splintered off between them. So some of these do get two different entries. So, let's start with the pilots. And the pilots did get two waves of sets, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm actually thoroughly surprised, because the first wave of sets are surprisingly very well put together, but there is one in particular that does stand out to me. Well, more specifically two. There were two sets that were released that were like a battle arena-esque set, one being, well, the Ninjago Battle Arena, and the other one being the Skeleton Bowling, which seems to take Jay and Cole and have them face either just a skeleton or a bunch of different training dummies. And honestly, compared to the rest of this wave, they felt a little bit like an afterthought. This is mainly because they just don't really seem up to par with the rest of them, because the rest are really cool skeleton vehicles, dragons, or the Dark Fortress itself, so it had a lot of steep competition. But between Skeleton Bowling and the Ninjago Battle Arena, I would probably say the worst one is the Ninjago Battle Arena. And this does come down to two things. For one, the Battle Arena does come with a lot of cool stuff, but it does just feel like a watered down variant of the Dojo set that we got, and the other thing is that it doesn't actually come with any exclusive minifigures like Jay did. So it is a bit of a letdown in the grand scheme of things, but honestly, I do think the Jay set is just a little bit better because it feels a little more unique. But that is possibly my least favourite set of this wave. And like I said, the second wave was also pilot sets again, and in similar vein, again came with some very cool looking builds. I honestly forgot how many cool sets came out in this one specific wave. Also, just to point out, I did just realize that JDX actually came out in the Lightning Dragon set, so technically Jay is not exclusive to the Battle Arena that he has, but it's still a fantastic set, so it's still better than the Cole one. But for this wave, I honestly would have to say that the worst set of the bunch has to be the Blacksmith Shop. This is mainly because we have wanted 4 weapons as a set for a very long time, and it feels like this one is just a bit of a letdown, honestly, because it doesn't do too much, and it does just make you wish you had a better version of that set. Not to mention as well is that it didn't actually have anything really exclusive. Yes, it did have the map to the weapons of Spinjitzu, but that doesn't justify an entire set, because other than that, it just has Pilot's Kai and it has Knuckle. So, it's just not exactly the best set in the world, but it also just had some steep competition as well, so that's gonna be the worst set of this wave. But we're gonna be moving on officially to Season 1, and in similar vein, it did also have 2 different waves of sets, so it has to be split off once again. But for the first wave and the majority of the Season 1 sets, I have to say the worst of the bunch probably has to be, again, the Battle Arena set. Because while I did consider it being the Snake Mech set or the Fangpire Mech set that we got, because that set in of itself is just very strange, unfortunately, the Battle Arena set just doesn't come with anything exclusive, and it just wasn't the best. Granted, if you were into the spinners at the time, which I somewhat was, it is a very good set for it, but honestly, it just doesn't hold itself in comparison to any of the other sets. Because yes, while the Fangpire Mech is not the best and it has a lot of weird things about it, it still felt like an actual set, whereas this one just felt a little bit dull in comparison, and it just didn't have a lot really that could stand up to it or stand as low as it, so that is why that one is the worst of the bunch. But like I said, Season 1 did get a second wave of sets, and it has 4 sets, but the problem with it is that 3 of them are some of the most iconic and sought after sets, and 1 of them isn't. So this one doesn't really have much of a chance, because you've got the Ultra Dragon, the Ultrasonic Raider, you've got the Samurai X set, and then you've just got a snake bike to go along with it. So unfortunately, that one is going to be the loser, because Lasher's bike cycle just won't pale in comparison to those other 3. And honestly, it makes sense, because it has a little build on the side, the bike doesn't really look complete, and there's no exclusive minifigures either. It was an easy way to get one of the Fang Blades, but other than that, it just didn't really do much for it. So that's why this is the worst one of the bunch. But luckily, this is where the split off seasons waves ends for a little bit of time, because the next wave, which is the final battle set, all came out in one wave. And unfortunately, the loser does have to be the Warrior's bike. This is mainly because the Warrior's bike feels the most incomplete of the bunch. You know, it had a lot of good competitors. It has the Temple of Light, Garmatron, the Golden Dragon, the Driller, and the Mech. So unfortunately, it does just feel like the worst of the bunch. And the other problem that came with it was the fact that it gave Jade this very weird jetpack, which unnecessarily inflated the value of that minifigure. So ultimately, it's just a very weird set with a lot of issues, and it just doesn't face up to the rest of them. But again, bringing us again to the next wave of sets. And this, of course, is going to be Rebooted. And Rebooted did actually have a split off wave. But the weird thing is that the second wave only had 2 sets, but I'll get to that in a minute. But for a majority of the sets, they did all come out in a single wave. But which is the worst of the bunch? And I'm gonna be honest, I did consider doing the Overborg attack, but it's still a very cool set with exclusive minifigures. So instead, I have gone with the Kai Fighter. And this is a very cool set, but unfortunately, it kind of just pales in comparison to the Legacy variant. And I know it can't hold up to a set that was released 5 years later, but it's still an aspect you have to consider. But like I said, that doesn't mean this is a bad set. Just honestly, this is where Ninjago sets or Ninjago waves got really good. And it has just a lot of really good competitors. And each of the other sets have some sort of gimmick or some sort of exclusive minifigure. So it did just kind of fall short. But it doesn't mean it's a bad set at all, and anyone who owns it will agree. But the problem is then it had another wave. And like I said, this wave literally had 2 sets. So it's either going to be the Battle for Ninjago City or the X1 Ninja Charger. And the Battle for Ninjago City set is considered one of the best that's ever released. So, unfortunately, the X1 Ninja Charger has to go as the worst one for this wave. But I'm not going to explain why, because it's not a bad set at all, and I'm not going to subject it to that. So let's move on to Tournament of Elements. And this is where it's actually going to get difficult for me, because the thing is that this, in my opinion, is where Ninjago got really good. And I'm also very nostalgic for this period of Ninjago, because this was when I was really into the set. But I will say that each wave still does have a contender for the worst. And I will say as well, this is where we did start getting a lot more of the mini sets. I know mini sets have been a thing since the beginning, but this is where it starts to have that resident set that's very small. And I don't like to include those ones, because when a set has under 100 pieces, of course it's not going to stand up to the one with 1,000. So I try to avoid those ones, and also avoid the 4+ ones as well. But let's actually get into the Tournament of Elements, and why it's the Anaconda Crusher. But simply put, it's not a bad set at all. I actually really liked this set when it came out. But the problem is that it's both a bit more of an incomplete vehicle, especially in comparison to the Chondrite Copter, and also, again, and I feel bad saying this, no exclusive minifigures, which every other set at least had one. And that's why it unfortunately is going to be the worst of the bunch. But again, I don't want to sit there and say why it's bad, because it's not. And anyone who has this set will agree with me, because it's really fun. But while I did consider doing the Anaconda Copter, it still has the Skylar minifigure and a very affordable way to get Chen. So I just had to not go with that one. And the rest of them are all just fantastic. So, unfortunately, the Chondrite Crusher has to go down like this. But again, going to the next season, Oh, this one sucks as well, because Possession did do very well with its sets, but I will have to give it to Jay Walker 1. And again, in similar vein to the Chondrite Crusher, it's not that it's a bad set at all, but the problem with it is the fact that it felt a little more incomplete again, because it's a very flat vehicle. It didn't feel like there was a lot going for it, but it still was really good, and it was a good way to get some more ghosts. It was a good way to get Jay, and also he does have that really cool Ghostbusters-esque pack on him, but it just did too much, really, and that's why it has to be the worst of the bunch. And also, in comparison to the other ninja vehicles of the season, obviously Kai didn't have one, but the blaster bike was amazing, the Wu Dragon was amazing, the Titan mech battle set was fantastic, so it did just pale in comparison. So unfortunately, again, this one's going to have to suffer. But I promise there are waves with bad sets, and we're going to get to that one next, so don't worry. Because the thing is that Skybound had an amazing wave of sets, and it did so much amazing stuff for a chunk of time. But the problem is that the Ninja Bike Chase exists. And why is that a problem? Well, even though it's a smaller set and it does have some cool bikes, I don't mind them at all, it just felt a little incomplete, and it didn't really come with a lot of cool minifigures, honestly. It came with a pirate, which was nice, but he has that really weird jetpack on him, so now he's worth a lot on Bricklink. And then you have Nia in her Possession outfit, which is canon, but also just a shame because obviously we had Possession last time, and then Skybound Kai, which was not exactly difficult to get your hands on. So it just didn't really have too much, and the bikes ultimately have just kind of been done better in different sets, so it just feels like a weak one, especially in comparison to some of the other ones we got. But speaking of weaker and to do with minifigures really, Day of the Departed again had a really good wave of sets, and a lot that I won't complain of, and a lot that is still my favourite and displayed to this day. I will say, most of these sets that came out in this wave are still displayed in my collection now. But I really don't like the salvage mech for one specific reason. And the reason itself is actually not the mech, but it's the connotations behind it. The mech is really cool and the Ronin minifigure is great, but that's about it. And I know the build is the selling point of any set, and that's why I own it, and that's why I display the Ronin mech. But the fact that this Day of the Departed set came with Skybound Nia is just kind of criminal. Why didn't we get her in her actual Day of the Departed outfit? And then not to mention we got the two Skulkin, which are cool and really cool looking minifigures, but they didn't give us a Samukai because why not, I guess, they just didn't want to do it. But why didn't we get a Samukai in this set would have been amazing with Samukai. Why didn't we get him? And that just kind of puts this set down, because at least the rest of the sets have something cool going for it. But I will say, if that wasn't a factor and the minifigures were correct of this set, in my opinion, it probably would have had to have been the Air-Jitsu Battleground set, because while it's an alright set and the minifigures are great, the thing is that then the rest of the build just isn't the best. So I could consider doing that one, but I at least had a little more fun with that set, and it completed the Air-Jitsu collection, so it's not going to be that one, and I'm going to stick it with the salvage mech. But that was Day of the Departed. But then actually came the movie of all things, and the movie did get 2 waves, I believe, or potentially 3, and all of those sets were absolutely amazing. But like any set, unfortunately, they are going to be the outliers. And let's just get it over and done with. In terms of wave 1 of the Ninjago movie, that jellyfish submarine is just absolutely terrible, because there was no way to position it correctly. It just didn't look good in any display. The manta ray bomber was amazing, and it just felt like a terrible set. And I don't honestly get how anyone who got it would have been happy with it, because it just had nothing going for it. But yeah, Wave 2 did also have a similar problem, where it released a bunch of really cool looking sets, but then also just didn't at the same time. It was just really strange, because that second wave gave us amazing ones like the Volcano, the Quake mech, the Garmadon machine, if that's how you want to call it, and then weirdly enough the Piranha attack, which was a good way of getting Coco, but that was about it. So again, that one unfortunately is going to have to take the L. But going back to the actual show itself, we are then going to talk about Sons of Garmadon. And again, a fantastic wave. Honestly, if there's anything to take from this video, just take the fact that there are no bad Ninjago sets, because so many of them are absolutely amazing, but unfortunately there's always going to be one or two that just doesn't fully hold up. And that's why, in terms of Sons of Garmadon, it has to be the SOG headquarters, because every other set does something absolutely amazing. I love the build of the Katana V11, the Street Racer Snake Jaguar is really cool, the Ninja Nightcrawler is amazing, Kilo vs Samurai X, and the Temple of Resurrection, just all amazing sets. And while I said with Day of the Departed, most of the sets are still on display, you can confidently see every single one of these sets in my collection. But unfortunately, the Sons of Garmadon headquarters, it just is a weird set, and it's also basically a spinner pack. Honestly, if they were going to make the headquarters set, I wish they went full on with it. And while there is some really cool stuff in this set, obviously you've got Ultraviolet, you've got Snake Jaguar, you've got some cool Sons of Garmadon members, and then you have that Lloyd. And that is really cool because that Lloyd also completed the Spinjitzu spinners, but it still just fails because it just doesn't do too much and it feels too gimmicky. And that's the one thing you don't want a LEGO set to have. So that unfortunately is why that one is the worst of the bunch, because ultimately every other set does something absolutely amazing. So it just has to suffer, unfortunately. But at least Hunted did better. Because I will say, of all of the waves that we've got, the worst one to decide for was definitely Hunted, because every single one of those sets were absolutely amazing. Honestly, this potentially is the best wave of Ninjago in my opinion. It's tight, it's to the point, and it does everything amazingly. But also Stormbringer is the worst one of the bunch. And it mainly comes down to two factors in my opinion when it comes to Stormbringer. His head is really weird, the neck is just not posable at all, it has no exclusive minifigures, and it just doesn't really hold to the rest, because every other set you can make an argument for as to why it's the best. Destiny's Wing is just a very fun little jet, the Throne Room has a lot of really cool minifigures that you can get for cheap, Firstborn is Firstborn, you know, the Diesel Naut is an amazing looking vehicle, the Dragon Pit's a fantastic set, it looks so good, and the Oni Titan is just a really cool finish. So again, unfortunately, it did just have to suffer. But again, it's not a bad set. But I tell you what also wasn't a bad set, or bad sets anyway, was Legacy, because every single set in this wave is amazing in its own regard. And honestly, probably one of the best waves of sets again, because each one you can make an argument for as to why it's not the worst. But unfortunately, if I was to pick one out, it probably would have to be the Samurai Mech, even though I'm trying not to do the smaller sets because it's difficult to say. Unfortunately, in terms of all of the smaller sets, this one does just do what it wants to do the worst, because the Golden Dragon still is a very good set and a good way to have that final battle, and the Monastery training set complements the Monastery very well. So it has to be the Samurai X Mech, because simply put, we've got better ones in the past and in the future, so it does just have to suffer. But again, it's not a bad set. Although now I've realized that this video is just mostly me saying, hey, this set is the worst, but it's also not bad. There are bad Ninjago sets, that's the thing, and I have gone through some of them. But the thing is that some of these waves are just really tight and just really good. Ninjago was on their A game at this point. So unfortunately, some of the sets that are a little just lackluster will be brought up in this video. But that was the first wave of Legacy at the very least. Because after the first wave of Legacy, we did end up getting these Season 11 sets. And again, they're fairly good, I've got to be honest. It's definitely another one of those waves that just didn't have its resident bad set, because the land bounty's sick, the castle is sick, the mechs are sick, the vehicles are sick, and even Firefang is sick. But unfortunately, if I was to have to pick one of them, it would probably be Firefang, and I don't feel good saying that because it's a really good set, but also every other set in my opinion is just a little bit better. But the only problem I would say with Firefang is the fact that I wish Firefang was a bigger set. I do think it deserved a bit more of a budget and a bit more of a brick count for it to do what it wanted to do, and that's my literal only complaint with it. But again, it is just a really cool set, but every other set just does what it's doing a little better. So I feel bad, but unfortunately that's the one that has to have it. But don't worry, because Wave 2 of Legacy also did have that resident set. Because while it was a bit more difficult, because it only had 4 sets, the Fire Dragon doesn't count because it's a 4+. The Jungle Raider, in my opinion, is fine for what it is. So it then comes down to between the Thunder Raider and the Golden Mech. And while it is going to be the Thunder Raider as being the worst one of the bunch, that again is not because it's bad, it's just a small wave. And I honestly contemplated not doing these waves, but I have to include them because it is just a point that you have to bring. Because while it's an incredible set, it doesn't improve on the original too much, which Legacy does like to do, so it doesn't really have that going for it. It never served as a replacement. It just served as a, well, I missed it at the time set, and then it doesn't really come with too many minifigures that were overly desirable. It has the Wave 2 Ninja, which are nice, and it has the Overlord, which is nice, but that was about it. But ultimately, it just wasn't really a set that people were running towards getting, and one I saw on the shelves for a while. And again, it just doesn't beat out the Golden Mech. And again, Wave 3, similar vein of Legacy, 3 sets, one of them being a 4+, so between Kai's Fighter and the Bounty, yet Kai's Fighter has to suffer again. It's a vast improvement, I will say, over the rebooted one. It's a fantastic looking set. But it's not the Bounty, so quickly moving on. But back to the actual season sets, we are now in Prime Empire. And again, it's a fairly good wave, because each set had something going for it that was actually fairly good. But honestly, if you had to pick between any of them to be the worst of the bunch, unfortunately, it probably would have to be Kai's mech. Because while it's a really cool transforming mech jet, and it's one that I still have on display to this day, every other set does it but better. Because Jay and Lloyd's ones are just nicer, it's a nicer set overall. The Ninja Tuna Car is a really nice looking set as well. And then all the bigger sets are just simply better, and I feel bad about saying that. And then the only last competitor is the Gamers Market, and that set is so good for its money. The amount of minifigures in that set's incredible. So I'm not gonna say that one either. This video is useless. I feel like I'm definitely gonna have people telling me to not have made this video. But it's still cool to look through these sets and see which one were the best and which one weren't. And I will say, if I do the video on the best of each wave, it'll definitely be more of a conversation. But yeah, that was Prime Empire. But next up was officially the closing out of Legacy. And again, just a bunch of sets which were really cool, because this was officially Wave 2. This was definitively that wave. And again, really cool looking sets. And I'm gonna have, I know it's a 4+, I'm breaking my rules, but it's my video. Jay's Electro Mech is that bad. I don't care, it's a 4+. It is the worst Ninjago set that's ever released. So that one's it. It's so bad in comparison to its original, it really is. So I don't care, it's breaking my criteria, but that one is the worst set. I can't go by without mentioning it. And the other wave, which released just after it, or just before it actually, I believe, only had 4 sets, 2 of them being 4+. So it's between the Ultrasonic Raider and the Fire Dragon. And I'm gonna be honest, the Ultrasonic Raider's worse. And you may be like, whoa, it's the big set. That's clearly the better one. It's the worst Sonic Raider. It really is. Oh, actually, wait a minute. The Dragon's Rising one exists. Ooh, that's a competitor. But it's just not the best. It's weird. The ninjas sit out like they do on the Stealth Raider, which is not the best. They should have all been in the original cockpits. The only thing that has going for it is the fact that it has the 10th anniversary Zane. But that's about it. I mean, personally speaking, I didn't buy this one. I just sniped the Gold Zane on an eBay listing. Yeah, it's just not a good set. And the Fire Dragon is also just so good. It doesn't have many minifigures, but it's such a good looking dragon. And also, again, the 10th anniversary Nia. So that one's just better, very easily. But back to the main show for a few seasons, we are going to be talking about Master of the Mountain. And honestly, very solid wave. I will say this is definitely where they started to cut down. The next few waves are very small, but that's because we're hitting COVID. So while it only has like 6 sets, they are still really good overall, all of them, but there is one standout. And weirdly enough, it's actually the Firestone Mech. I know it's a bigger set, but all the mini sets are really good, have good minifigures, it has everything you wanted to. So it leaves the bigger sets. And the Firestone Mech is mainly red for no reason at all. It's just wildly inaccurate. And it is just a shame because the stone mech in the show was amazing. So this set is going to be the unfortunate loser because it's just wrong. It really is. It's a wrong set. I don't like this set. It should have been grey. Why wasn't it grey? But don't worry, because the island then came out and only had 4 sets for that entire season, which honestly is a shame. And they're all pretty good, But unfortunately, Lloyd's Jungle Bike has to take it because while it's a cool set and it's one I still have on display, it's just another Lloyd vehicle set, and also the other ones are just simply better. So this one has to unfortunately have the L. But again, not a bad set. I mean, the Island was a really good set of 4, don't get me wrong, but that one is probably the least desirable of the bunch. Same thing with Seabound though. I did actually get most of the Seabound sets, I will say, and they're all actually pretty good. It's actually probably one of the more difficult ones to say because the 5 sets are all really solid. But unfortunately, the Ninja Subspeeder is gonna have to take it because the mech is pretty cool for Lloyd. I know another Lloyd mech or another Lloyd vehicle, haha. But the Subspeeder, while it's a cool car, simply has just had it done better. And the Water Dragon's sick, the Endless Sea set's sick, and the Hydro Bounty is amazing. So, bye Ninja Subspeeder. And then with Crystallized, they did actually pick it back up. And again, a really cool range of sets, but unfortunately there is another clear loser to me. Because while all the Ninja vehicles are really cool, I do think Jay got the short end of the stick because his is so small. And I think if he had more of a budget, it would have been better. But in general, Crystallized was a very big wave. There's a lot of big sets. So unfortunately, it kind of just lost by proxy. But if you were to talk about specifically only the bigger sets, it probably would be Kai's Golden Dragon Raider. Because while it is a cool looking set, it just didn't really do much in comparison to the other ones of that size. But like we said, I think a lot of people will agree that Crystallized was just a fantastic wave. So again, it's just difficult to determine it. But every other set has something cool going for it. So unfortunately, yeah, if it's not the smaller one, which is Jay's bike, it has to be Kai's. But before we get into Dragon's Rising, let's just quickly knock out all of Core, so we can just get it done and then talk about Dragon's Rising to end off the video. As for Wave 1 of Core, and by the way, if you don't know my opinion on Core already, one of my first videos that actually got a lot of views is me talking about how Core failed as a sub-theme, so definitely check out that video if you haven't. But honestly, Wave 1 had a lot of contenders, honestly, for the worst set, which is a shame, but unfortunately that's just it. But yeah, as for the worst one of Wave 1, unfortunately, it's gonna have to be Jay's Thunder Dragon, because it looks like a 4+ set, to be honest with you, but it's not. It's really strange, and Jay's Dragons have simply just been done better in the past, so it doesn't offer anything special enough for it to be considered a decent set to me. Wave 2 was literally one set, and it was a 4+ set of that, so if you're wondering why Wave 2 is not here, that's why. And Wave 3, again, just continued with the really weird ninja vehicles. So, of the bunch, it would probably have to be Kai's Mech Rider, because it's just a really weird looking set. I don't know why this set actually exists, and it's just strange. It really is. I don't get it. Why did they get the idea for a Mech Rider? I don't know. But yeah, that's probably the worst of the bunch. But as then for Dragon's Rising, of course, there was a fair few waves of Dragon's Rising sets. But as for Wave 1, which is the worst of that bunch? Because while I think Dragon's Rising Wave 1 was quite good overall, I do still think there's a couple that are just a bit strange. So, yeah. But honestly, if I had to pick between the bunch, it would probably actually have to be Lloyd and Aaron's Ninja Team Mech. Because while it's a alright set and it's a bit bigger, unfortunately it doesn't do much in the way of its minifigures, it's not really much in the show, it's a really weird existence. It's not actually their mech, it's just the administration's. So it's just a weird existence. I don't get why the set really exists. And all of the other sets at least do something that's cool in my opinion. So yeah, that's definitely has to be the worst of Wave 1. But honestly, if there was going to be a second place, I would weirdly give it to Heatwave. But Wave 2 was actually the Dragon Rising mech sets, which are pretty cool, I will say. It's a pretty cool looking wave. And you've got all the ninjas mechs and then weirdly Egalts, so that's interesting. But it's basically just which is the worst of the mechs, and that is going to have to be Sora's, unfortunately, because Jay's is a battle pack, and I'm not putting that one down at all. I like how meaty Cole's is, and Kai's is just a really solid mech. So unfortunately, welcome to the worst set, Sora. Which then does bring us to the Season 2 sets, and again, it's a fairly closed-off wave of sets. And honestly, I half consider giving it to the Dragonstone Shrine because of the lack of cool minifigures. I know it has the Wu, and it has the Euphrasia, which are pretty cool, but then it for some reason has Season 1 Kai and Nia. It's just a strange set, it really is. But the worst one is not that one, weirdly enough, because honestly, I'm just not the biggest fan of Aaron's buggy sets, because it was weirdly overpriced as well, and it just doesn't give too much for what it is. It's really basic. I'm not overly a fan of this buggy overall, so again, like Sora, welcome to the list, Aaron, but yeah, that's probably the worst of that bunch. And then the last of the sets that we currently have in hand, at the very least, is of course the ones from the actual tournament itself, and it has to be the combo vehicle. It is just a really weird off-brand ultrasonic raider. I don't like it at all. It wasn't really in the season much, and every other set has something at least going for it, because the massive mech is amazing, the source dragon's amazing, the battle sets are cool. It's just a really cool looking bunch of sets, and then weirdly that vehicle exists. So yeah, that's probably the loser. And then I don't really want to put it in here, but the brand new ones that were just revealed, the worst one is clearly in the video I released. Go check it out. But that is, in my opinion, the worst set of each and every wave that we've gotten of Ninjago. And I'm going to be honest, I'm very much questioning how this is going to turn out in the edits. But I do still think it's a solid video, and it opens up a lot of conversation. But like I said, let me know which ones you do agree with me on and which ones you don't agree with me on. But other than that, guys, thank you for watching, and I do hope you enjoyed this video. But like I said, just give me a comment and let me know which ones you do like, and let me know if you want me to talk about the best of every wave. But that's about it, guys. Thank you for watching. Take care. Okay,